Hi, everyone. Welcome to Authenticity with Alicia, the podcast where we explore burnout, the pressures of society, and our quest for identity and authenticity. I'm Alicia, and today we're joined by Ryanne Mellick. Oh my gosh, I already mispronounced the name, and we had just gave her the spiel of how we're not going to do any editing. Ryanne Mellick, who is a wonderful therapist and coach based out in Minnesota. She specializes in parenting and helping families communicate, engage, interact in healthy, meaningful ways. She's also a parent herself, and that's one of our topics that we're going to be talking about today. So thank you so much for joining me this morning, Ryanne.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad we finally connected and made it work.
Yes, I don't know why I always do like a family tree in the beginning of every session of like how I know the people. And it's like we've gotten to connect loosely on social media. We follow
Mhm.
in like some similar circles and I'm just like finally excited to get to like chat with you more outside of social media because we only get to
Yeah.
like do little glimmers and snippets on there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we just realized our love for Minnesota.
Yeah, before we started
It's amazing.
recording, we just were talking about how amazing it is. And I showed her my tattoo of Minnesota and how even I call Sioux Falls West Minnesota, where like I don't actually call it South Dakota. It's like y'all are 15 to 30 minutes away. Minnesota border, not Minneapolis. And I'm like, there's Minnesota license plates everywhere. We don't have our own sports team. So there's like Viking and Twins decor everywhere. And I'm like, I'm basically just rural Minnesota.
Yeah, I think that tracks. We went there on a family vacation a couple years ago and it was amazing. It was so fun. But yeah, it was like we're just basically in Minnesota.
Yeah. You just,
Minus the weird rules that you can't bring children into some bars.
oh, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if that's still a thing, but we had our 2-year-old who's now 4, but she was 2 at the time, and we could not go into some places because everyone had to be 21.
Oh, interesting. I do know like that a lot of the restaurants are also like casinos. And I
Oh,
don't know
maybe
if
that's
that
part of
has
it.
anything to do with anything. That's super weird. 'Cause I know Minnesota is a very like family friendly, like even
Oh,
breweries you
yeah.
can bring your families, and it's just
Mhm.
interesting dynamics. Well, anyway, we won't just bore everyone with Minnesota chat, even though we could, because Minnesota's
We
the
could.
best. Um, I know one of your specialties is parenting. I mean, speaking of,
Yeah.
bringing kids to places, and so I know it's kind of like a vague question, but like, how did you get into that specialty as a parent therapist and parent coach?
Yeah, I'm not even sure. I mean, yes, I do kind of like to think I specialize in that work. I'm by no means an expert, right? There's like all these great influencers on social media and there's all these great people. And I was just talking to some parents, kind of this like with this transition of back to school, just like the
Mm,
overwhelm and feeling like parenting is just overwhelming. And I myself had a baby during the pandemic, like August 2020, she was born, like pregnant the whole time. Um,
geez.
and I just really kind of was like, one, I don't feel prepared for parenting. Like, two, I also feel very alone. And granted,
Mm,
yes, it was COVID, so I didn't have a choice but to be isolated. And I just wanted to like learn how to be the best
yeah.
parent that I could be, which is a very individual thing, right? And I put
Mhm.
that in air quotes because there is like no best. We're
Mhm.
all in this wild, chaotic, beautiful thing together. But it really came about of like I just want to help other parents understand that they're not alone and
Mhm.
kind of give them other ways to approach parenting that
Mhm.
maybe they didn't get as a child, or now they're like struggling to parent maybe a difficult child. Like, how do we change the perspective around this so
Yeah.
that you show up better for yourself, which trickles down into your parenting?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So a COVID baby, like you said. So
Oh,
not only I think is that like you said, a lonely, I mean, it's a huge transition. It's exciting. It's nerve-wracking, all these big emotions. And then we're in the middle of a pandemic.
mhm.
And so like there's all these restrictions and really maybe not getting like some of the natural support that maybe other new parents are getting during that time. And then I think you're just spot on of people don't talk a lot about it. I mean, people talk
Right.
about parenting, and I think it's becoming more talked about now, which I'm very thankful for. But it's almost just like this expectation of, well, you just parent. And it's like, okay, but like how and what? And this is scary. And there's humans. And like, what if I mess something up? And I don't think people really do a lot of that prep work until you're like in it.
Mm. Yeah, because you can't prep for it. I mean, sure, you can read the books and you can find the social media things and you can find the mommy blogs and the mommy groups on Facebook, which are a shit show. Am I allowed to swear, Alicia? Because here we are.
Yeah,
They're
let's
like, the
do
mommy
it.
groups on Facebook are just, they're a train wreck. Like, they're so
Ugh.
overwhelming.
Yeah.
They're so intense and there's just so much going on and it's so much to filter through, especially as a new parent,
Mm.
that you're just like, I'm just trying to keep this baby alive. And all these moms, thousands of them, are like spouting off all these different things. I don't know what to do and
Oh
what to take in.
yeah.
So I think from my perspective as the therapist and kind of the coach around it is to, how do we pick it apart for your family? And
Mm.
this came up with clients that I had about this, following the social media accounts of
Mhm.
like these bigger, 1+ million following accounts that we see. They're so broad. They don't take into account like the nuance of your
Mhm.
specific family, your needs, your dynamics, your child,
Yes.
you as a person. They are just putting out information,
Yep.
which is great,
Mhm.
but it is not the end all be all of parenting. It's not right or
Yes.
wrong, it's not good or bad, but I would guess 99% of the time, that one reel is not going to work for your family.
Mhm.
And so how do we kind of sit in this room together and unpack it for your family?
Yes. I think that's just like a good reminder for social media stuff in general. I mean, I know we both
Yes.
are fairly active in raising awareness about mental health topics on social media. And I think you do a really good job of this. I try to like be really intentional with who I follow, who like make those like nuance matters, like here's this information.
Mhm.
Now you can take some of it. This may not apply to you. You can tweak it to really make it make sense for you. And I think that's always like a red flag for some social media accounts when it's like, you have to do this. This always leads to this. This is the only way. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're talking about something like parenting. There's
Yeah.
it's like overwhelming how many choices and options there are, and everyone's got a strong opinion on what's the best and what's the right one. And I love that there's people like you who's able to be like, let's slow this down.
Yeah.
Let's really make it make sense for you. I'm like, F the haters over here.
Yeah. It's also just uh, also like conflicting pages, conflicting
Mm,
information. What do we do with it? I've tried all of these things that I saw on social media and they're not working. Well, right, because they're just there. They're just educational tidbits that the people put out for likes and follows and
mhm.
education. It
Yep.
doesn't mean nobody's promising that they're going to work for your family, but I think that's become the assumption that with some of these
Mhm.
bigger accounts that they're the expert, they know, and this is what's going to work. And
Yeah.
I think I often use Dr. Becky as an example because I get a lot of parents who are like, I have a deeply feeling kid. And I'm like, do you? Tell me more because I have a 4-year-old who has a lot of feelings,
Mm,
big, big feelings and opinions. I could classify her as a deeply feeling kid,
mhm.
but I don't think she is. So tell me why you have that.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, they just have these tantrums. And I'm like, that's okay. Let's talk about that more.
Yeah.
That's not the label. We just want to pick and choose. But I think that's easy.
Yes. Oh, that label thing. I think like that's been one of the pros and cons to everything, right? And so it's
Right.
like social media. I love that there's awareness of things. I love that even like different diagnoses are being talked about more, and like people who didn't get labels that would have helped them find appropriate treatment are now getting those labels. But then
Mhm.
sometimes we're also like misappropriating things and like labeling things too rigidly and almost like
Yeah.
not exploring that a little bit deeper too. So like you said, your child could be this deeply feelings child, or it could be a child that, I don't know, a 4-year-old who doesn't have a tantrum if like they don't get what they want, myself
Yeah.
included. When I was a kid, I didn't get like a toy, and it was the biggest like
You
earth-shattering
lost your
thing for
mind.
my little 4-year-old brain at that time.
Right. Right. And it comes down to the to kind of bring it full circle with the conversation of how are you feeling and responding
Mm,
to those instances and those experiences. If you're feeling overwhelmed by this tantrum, of course it's going to feel extra big.
yes. Oh, I
So
love that.
how can I help you feel less overwhelmed by that? And that is a lot more of where my work is shifted, of how
Mhm.
do we get you to feel okay with your
Yeah.
child having feelings and outbursts and meltdowns and tantrums and opinions,
Oh.
because that's not addressed on social media.
I was supposed to say that's a huge gap that like I think
So
we're
yes, I'll start my
starting.
Instagram back up.
Yeah, yeah. So say, I think like again, I'm glad that we're talking about raising awareness of kids and emotions and normalizing tantrums, and they're not being bad or greedy or manipulative. They're just being, but it's like as a parent, and also I'm not a parent by the way, but like I can imagine if you're in the middle of a Target and your kid starts having a tantrum, you're gonna have a natural response to that. You might be triggered by something. You may be getting overwhelmed. You may be like, oh my gosh, people are looking at me and judging me and just all these things going on. And it's like, okay, we're often taught, well, you need to be there for your child. You need to regulate your kids' emotions. That's really dang hard when our own bodies are being taken over by our emotions.
Yeah. And I'll share this story here because I feel like it resonates with a lot of people. I have a 4-year-old. We were out this summer, my husband and her, at a local like dive bar by our house where they sell pull tabs. Very Minnesotan of us.
Love everything about that sentence.
My best friend, who I had not seen in real life in 10 years, was in town from Canada. So we were out all day, just having a day on this Friday. We go to dinner. We're playing some pull tabs. We run out of cash to buy more pull tabs, and my daughter starts to get upset.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We can see it kind of coming. I know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
She then asks if the server and us, she asks the server because we go to this place a lot. We kind of are familiar, right? Do you have any more money so I can get some pull tabs? Guys, she's 4. Okay.
Oh.
Um, the server says no. We tell her we're done with pull tabs. Huge. The explosion, like throws a
Mm-hmm.
cup, just
Mm-hmm.
loses it, screaming, kicking, and I just sat there and I was like, okay, I'm going to take a few deep breaths before I even acknowledge what's happening.
Yeah.
Because the second I come in hot, she's going to get hotter.
Mm-hmm.
And then to top it off, a family who I work with happened to be in the restaurant
Of course, right?
at the same time. And this brought on some shame and some kind of guilt of, I do this work for a living and I don't have the answers all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I am raising a child who's also a human being, and I cannot and should not control her emotions and her feelings.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I can do is control myself in the situation to help bring it down a little.
Yeah.
And to validate her experience and validate her feelings.
Mm.
And was I bummed that we ran out of money for pull tabs? Of
Yeah.
course. But I have learned how to control my emotions. She
Yep.
has not.
Yep.
And so I say that to say, we're all humans trying to figure this out. And when I looked around, nobody was paying attention. Nobody gave a shit what was happening. They were just like, your kid's mad. Cool,
Yeah.
we're gonna go on eating our burgers and doing our own thing. Nobody's staring, nobody's watching. And I think that's a misconception or a insecurity that we assume everybody starts looking.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
they
like
don't.
that. It's like that adolescence stage where it's like
Yes.
we think everyone is like caring about us and judging everything that we're doing, and it's like then we're like, oh, actually they're focusing on their own stuff, and I'm not
Yeah.
the center of their universe. Wild, but it
Right.
feels so real in that moment, and it's just we're feeling all those things. And like you said too, like even like you do this professionally, so there's like that little bit of imposter syndrome that might have
Yeah.
crept up, or that shame of like, oh, how are people supposed to, expect me to help them? Because we're not supposed to have like magic wands of like, we have
Right.
perfect lives. It's, hey, I can sit with you during this really hard thing, and I can normalize and validate and help you make sense of some of these things. We are not perfect.
No. And the goal is to have as many things in your toolbox to try that you can, because
Mhm.
not everything works perfect every time. And every tantrum, outburst, meltdown, whatever we want to call it, is different every time. So you need to have things that you can grasp at. And that is what I work to provide and get you those things that work for your family.
Oh, I love it. I love that too. Cause yeah, I think you see, like you said, on the social media accounts, they're going to be like, oh, well, this is what I do when my kid does this. And it's like, when you try it and it doesn't work. And then I think a lot of the women that I work with, they internalize that and they think,
Yes.
oh, something must be wrong with me. If this person's Instagram account shows that this works with their kid, and it's not working with mine, what am I doing wrong? And it's like,
Yeah.
you're coming in here saying nothing, like different
Right.
families, different kids, different experiences. That's just one tool out of many.
Yeah. And we don't know what we don't know. So you have essentially been taught how to parent by your parents.
Mm,
And so we're also parenting in a wildly different time than
yes.
many of us who are raising kids now. Like we're trying to parent around technology and
Mhm,
safety concerns and
mhm,
all, XYZ, all of these other things that our parents didn't necessarily have to worry about or think about worrying.
mhm.
So there becomes this kind of hypervigilance with it too. And really, you know, I don't always want to believe that like everything goes back to our childhood, but there are some things that are deeply rooted in our childhood. Like when
Yep.
your child is having these big feelings or not being nice to a peer, and your experience as a child was that you are a bad kid because you did something like that, you
Mm,
are going to assume that your child is going to be labeled or viewed as a bad kid.
yes.
So, how can we also deconstruct that and break that down so that you're not carrying that weight
Mhm.
through parenting? Because it truthfully doesn't end when they're 18,
Yeah.
like,
It's
and
like you
we're,
kind of care about them forever, and we keep
yeah,
evolving and having life experiences
right.
impact us. So that's a
Yeah,
good point.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I agree. I think those early life experiences, I'm not one of those where it's like it always has to come back
right,
to this, and we're digging
right.
and we're like, aha, we found the childhood trauma that experienced this. But
Yeah,
we also like know that our brain develops and remembers things, and we learn what different messages are. We create rules and makes assumptions. And so like you said, in that situation our brain remembers, oh, maybe I had this experience and I don't want this for my kid, and I'm worried that they're going to have this similar thing that I did. Are there other like societal? I mean, I know the answer. I really don't want to. I want to know like what they are, because it's going to answer like a yes or no question. Like, are there other societal pressures that they put on parents? And it's like, well, yes. So I'm curious, like, what are the societal pressures that we put on parents these days?
that I think a big one is that we are expected to know how to do it all.
Mm,
No, that's so unrealistic.
yeah.
Nobody
Mm,
know nobody knows how to do it all. Dr. Becky doesn't even know how to do it all. Big Little Feelings they don't even know how to do it all. Nobody knows how to do it all
mm,
because every child that comes into this world is different.
mhm,
Situations are different, experiences are different. Social and emotional like learning and skills are different. Like the state of our country is different. Nobody knows how to
mhm.
do it all.
Yeah.
You know, I never thought that I would come into parenting and have to review schools for safety because
Mm,
why should I have to do that, right?
mhm.
That's the world we live in.
Yeah.
I never thought that I would have to be a little extra cautious at a playground because something happened there a few weeks ago. But that's the reality that we live in. So nobody can prepare you for parenting and for the constant changes that come with parenting.
Mm. I think that's a really good point, because I think when I hear, doing it all, I often think about like the work life balance,
Mhm.
and I think you're making a good point of like that's an element of it, but it's also just like like the daily things that parents have to explore and prep for and think about, and it's like going to a park, picking out schools, these daily tasks. I mean, I guess you're not picking out school every day, but these regular tasks, and we're expected to like one, know all the answers, do it right all the time, be able to juggle all of those things and manage just everything. Like, and like I'm hearing like an implicate like a subtlety too of like it has to be right? Like you have to manage it
Right.
all and you have to do it correctly.
Yeah.
It's
And
like,
it
well,
goes back
neither
to
of those
this,
are possible.
right. And it goes back to this concept of the mental load that's,
Mm,
really taken off the last couple of years that we're just constantly thinking about things and thinking about how should I have done that different? How could I have handled that better? How
mm,
could I have done the right thing? Like, should I have changed something about this? Should we stop? Like all of these things that are running through our minds all the time. There is no right or wrong with the caveat, unless you are actually doing wrong things
right. Like do
in
like
your
safety
parenting, right?
exceptions
But
type
yeah,
things.
there is no right or wrong. It is what works for you and what works for your family. And I do think that social media feeds into this pressure of we need to be able to to balance working and to balance home life and to balance kids' activities and to also be able to afford all of these things, because look at all these influencers who can do all of these things for their
Ugh.
kids. And it's setting this unrealistic expectation
Mm-hmm.
and adding to the feelings that parents are experiencing of failure, not good enough,
Mm-hmm.
shame, guilt. And it's kind of heartbreaking in a way to see, because parenting should be fun and enjoyable. Yes, it's super effing hard, but there should also be a lot more moments of good.
Yeah.
And that's what's missing. That's kind of, I think, where the societal piece is at right now.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And I think it is really sad because it's like, when you're working with your families, and I wonder, I assume you're doing this because like when I work with my parents, I see all the good that they're doing. I see them trying, I see them, learning and just like the love that they have for their kids. And that's not at the forefront of their brain because they're comparing themselves to these other people. They're focusing on their perceived inadequacies, their perceived flaws. And it's just like, we know like good enough parenting is wonderful, actually. Like just being there. And those are the powerful things. But when we're comparing ourselves to these perfect influencers who have the perfectly clean house and are going on these vacations and who have these kids who respond to these tools perfectly in this 60-second or less video,
Right.
we feel like crap because our life does not look like that.
Yeah. And I think to make it more realistic, you don't see what's going on behind the scenes. You don't see the nannies, you don't see the house cleaners, you don't see the people putting up their content, doing all of that. You don't see that part. All you see is the 60-second highlight reel,
Mm-hmm.
which is really hard for a lot of people to discern from, I think,
Yeah.
and
And
to separate the two.
I think so. And I think a lot of times, like people logically can say, oh, I know it's social media. But then when we're in our doom scrolling and we're in that headspace, it feels
Yeah.
so real that, oh my gosh, they have it all together and I don't.
Yeah. And I think another expectation or societal piece is that I forgot.
If it comes back, interrupt me because I love tackling the societal stuff because it's like all of that. I'm a big narrative therapist. So I'm like, we're impacted by all these things and
Oh, I
these
remember.
shoulds and yay.
Yeah, I remember that. And this is maybe biased from my standpoint as a therapist, but the assumption, presumption, expectation that bringing your child to therapy will fix the
Mm,
issues. I don't know it. I feel like that's more of a societal thing. I genuinely believe that people don't just come up with that thought on their own, that my kid is broken and a therapist
yeah.
is going to fix them.
Mhm.
Um, but that is not the case. My job is not to fix your child, because
Mhm.
your kid's not broken. You're not broken. My job is to help your child learn these things along the way and to help you also. And so a big disconnect that I see, which is also maybe a societal piece, is that the lack of involvement from parents
Mm, mhm. Do you
who
think that
think
has
that,
anything to do with like their shame of like, oh, maybe I did something wrong and like that's why my kid is
yeah,
like this?
yeah, maybe, or that it's, yeah, partly that, and maybe that it's also on the child to figure it out,
Hmm. Yeah,
right?
that makes sense.
But our 1 hour a week, every other week, once a month is not going to have a major impact unless you as the parents are involved to do the work at home.
Yep.
And I say that with the best intentions, because I do want to see these kids succeed, and I do want to see parents succeed, and for families to be happy and live healthy lives. So I think for those listening, like if you do have a kid in therapy, check your involvement level,
Yeah.
see where you're at with things.
Yep.
You will have much more progress and success with more involvement.
Yep, 1,000%. I think too, like I think of the generation, the generational differences. Like our generation and especially the younger generations, they're very pro therapy. We're having these, teenagers saying on social media, oh, this is what my therapist said. And I know like for my parent generation and above, therapy was kind of seen as taboo. You only go if
Mhm.
there's something wrong with you. It can be seen as a punishment. It can seem like you're weak. And so I'm thinking of different parents then who may have that message in their head of,
Yeah.
oh, well, I don't want to be involved. This isn't about me. Or like it can bring up some of those unconscious kind of biases or like messages that they've heard. And it's like, no, actually, like therapy can be this wonderful thing. And we can make you guys have these not make, but we can help you guys have these meaningful interactions and closeness and connection. And that's really going to be expedited if you're involved.
Mhm.
They see you all the time. They see us, like you
Yeah.
said, once a week, most,
Right.
maybe two to four times a month, really, is when we're seeing these folks.
Mhm. Yeah. 2 to 4 hours out of all the hours in their day,
Mhm.
in their month, which is very small.
Yep.
And even from the standpoint of having a dysregulated child, sometimes we get a half an hour of regulated work.
Yep.
That drops the success down a little bit further. So, yeah, I think society just plays such a role. The standards are so high. Um, and unfortunately, I don't think there's a way to combat it. It's never social media is never going away. Society's always going to continue to evolve.
Mhm.
But if you as a parent can find a way to separate the two and live more intentionally in your world,
Mm.
some of those what we consider like negative feelings will dissipate.
Yep. I love the word intentional. That's something that I use with a lot of my clients too, is, because I think a lot of our brains, we want to do good things, the right
Mhm.
thing. Like, we want to be the best. We want to be the right, like all those like words. And instead of like saying, well, what's like the best thing you can do? What's a good thing you can do? It's what can we be intentional about?
Yeah.
Oh, I want to just like be present with my kids for a little bit more this week. I want to just like have
Mhm.
some quality time with them. That's really powerful.
Yeah. And those are the moments that matter in parenting.
Mm.
If you can carve out 15 minutes of intentional time to sit on the floor and play Legos or Play-Doh, that's going to matter more than when you yelled at them for spilling milk.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to remember that you played with them.
Yeah.
The yelling, sure, that might stick around, but what will be more important is that you showed up.
Mm-hmm.
You were there. And I'm going to add this because I think it's huge right now. You need to put your phone away.
Mm.
If you're going to carve out 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour to be with your kid, you need to do it distraction free.
Yep.
My 4-year-old, even now, she's like, Mom, why are you on your phone? Mom, put your phone away. Mom, pay attention to me. I'm like, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm trying to like answer some last minute work emails. I
Mm-hmm.
will, and being intentional of, I will put it away and be with you in 3 minutes. I'm going to set a timer.
Yep.
Okay. They're so aware. They're little sponges. And I don't remember what I was listening to. It must have been a podcast, but it was about phones of even even if you think that by having your phone face down by you means you're not distracted, you're wrong because it's in your
Mm-hmm.
sight and you're still thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So the second you feel the vibration, the second your Apple Watch goes off, the second
Mm-hmm.
it chimes, you are going to automatically default to check that because that's what we've been conditioned to do.
Yep.
So you put it in do not disturb, you put it away for however long you've said you would put it away for, and you focus on your child.
Yep.
That's what matters.
Mm.
That is intention,
Yep.
right?
And I think that's so important too, because like we see, the teens then come in and parents are like, oh my gosh, my teens are on their phone all the time. And it's like,
Don't get me started.
well, what are we doing, right? Like our society has kind of made us so reliant on our emails, our computers, our phones, and these kids are sponges. This 4-year-old is aware of, oh, mom's on her phone. And if that's like the culture in that family to be on our phones often, to have it near us, to use it as distractions, they're going to grow into kids and teens who are going to be on their phones all the time.
Yeah. I love this conversation. This is a topic that I'm so passionate about and I get so fired up about it because I see it all the time of parents who want to use technology and screen time as a consequence or a punishment,
Mm.
which I don't live in your world. I'm not a part of your family. However, for teenagers especially, when we punish them by taking away their cell phone, you are removing every connection that they have.
Yeah.
And then we start to question, why are they so depressed? Why are they
Mm,
isolating? Why are they not talking to me? Why are they having these, maybe self-harm thoughts have kicked in? Why are all of these negative things happening? You took away all the good, safe, positive connections that they had. Their friends, their other family members. Maybe parents are divorced. You just took away connection from a parent, possibly.
mm,
So let's reframe it. It's not a bad thing. You can set parameters. You can set
mhm.
screen time limits. You can put child protection stuff on phones. But be more aware of what the long-term effects are when you are taking away their only way to connect with people,
Right.
right? And then you want to take it away, but then you also want to be on your phone in front of them. Guys,
Mhm.
like, come on. I think we've just become so accustomed. Like, we've had technology for so long now. It's just a part of who we are. Like, it's our,
Yep.
our third hand. But let's really just take a step back and start to think about the implications and kind of the detrimental effects that some of this is having.
Yep.
And I do think this is like our generation specifically is more aware of this,
Mhm.
because we're seeing people like go, smartphone free and kind of remove themselves from social media, and some things are shifting, I think, for the better. But let's just not use it as a punishment.
Yeah. Like you said,
Let's
like that
not
the
use that as the
rigidness of it
consequence.
too, of
Yeah,
like just completely taking it away. Because I know you're talking about like the social support piece. Because yeah, again, like these kids, that's what they grew up in. Like they
right,
don't have the you go down the street and you knock on your neighbor's door. They don't
right.
have the oh, I'm
You
gonna
don't hop
write a
on your computer and
letter.
AOL chat.
Aim, RIP. Like this is their norm. This is how
Right.
they communicate. And so for older generations and us, we might be like, well, what's the big deal? You can just like go down the street and see if your friend's home.
Yeah,
That's not what they do. They just send a quick
right.
little thing like, hey, are you around? And so just take that away, other family. And then we wonder, well, why are they sad? Why are they this? I
Yeah,
also think like social media and just their phones in general, it's all about coming back to that word intentional. It
right.
can be used for good. I love a good short-term distraction. Like if I just need
Same.
like a little brain break, I will like set a timer and say, okay, I'm just gonna like be mindless for 5 to 15 minutes. That's okay. It's when
Mhm.
we are mindless and just scrolling and comparing and going into these doom spirals. And so if these teens, they may have their music playlist on their phones. They may have their
Right,
coping tools, their healthy distractions. And if we take all technology away, we're wondering, well, why aren't they coping? Why aren't they talking? Because they
right.
learned how to reach out to their people and how to cope with their feelings with that
Yeah.
technology.
They also, almost every teenager I work with, I make them put the crisis number in their phone when we're together.
Mm,
So you are like, that is also another outlet that they have,
yeah.
that you as a parent may or may not even know that they're using, but it's something that it is a safety component that you are removing
Mhm.
from their availability and
Right.
from their access. Um, and I think on the screen time, like, especially I see a lot of parents who are, my kid just like struggles to get off screen time. It's so dysregulating. We're like, okay, let's figure out what that looks like for your family. My daughter's an iPad kid. She don't even don't even care. Don't even care. Come at me, I don't care. She has an iPad. We use it out in public. We have established this as part of our life, but we've now hit a phase at 4 where maybe we need to reassess things.
Mm,
And so now we're in this stage of what does that look like? And it is very difficult. And
yeah.
I recognize that it is very difficult to change screen time limits and boundaries.
Yes.
But you as the parent have to enforce that and have to be able to like hold true to that, because it's going to be so uncomfortable for everyone for a long time until your child readjusts, and you are going to have to help them find other things to fill that time.
Yep.
So you're not alone in that battle. I'm right there
No.
alongside you right now.
I think that's a good point of like reminding parents that those boundaries can change.
Yeah.
You know, whether we get more information, whether the context changes, whether the development of the child changes, like it's okay to make those adjustments. It's going to be hard because our bodies and the kids, we like our norm. And anytime we add information, even if it's good change, our bodies are like, whoa, 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 no.
Yeah.
But like you said, you'll get through it. They will adjust. People are resilient and they can learn new normals. It's just being able to ride through that wave and figuring out, well, what does this new normal look like?
Yeah. And two, I don't know when this will air one, but we're at the start of the school year, and I don't know if you followed the news, but a lot of the schools here, and maybe it's a United States thing, but have really put stricter boundaries on their phones in school. And I
Yeah.
was watching the news this morning, and a principal of one of the local schools here was talking about how even just like this first 2 days of school, and this school started it last year, they were kind of a
Mm,
pilot for it, but even last year noticing that kids are talking more, they're engaging more, their heads
mm,
aren't down in their phone, grades are starting to improve,
mhm.
like all of these positive things are happening because we're just taking a step back from the screen,
Yep.
and kids and teenagers are learning how to have face-to-face interactions,
Yeah.
which makes my heart so happy.
Yes. I think that's a good reminder too of like finding the gray in things, right? So it's like we're not
Yes.
saying, oh my gosh, all of this is bad. Let's cut it out completely when there's no choice and in difficult situations. But okay, at school, you're around other people. And so, okay, in these situations, we're gonna maybe limit that screen time. We're gonna, encourage you to go talk to your people and go sit by someone else at the lunch table.
Yes.
And we're seeing positives there. So it's just again finding out in what context, in what situations is that gray there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw something about Virginia, I think. There were some teachers from Virginia doing that too. So I'm intrigued to see more like information as more schools are doing this.
Yeah. One of the local districts, they were like no tech till 8th grade. So even like no Chromebooks, no nothing until 8th grade,
Yes.
which I will be curious to see how that changes over the next few years, but
Hmm.
I'm just like that. I would love for when Noah's in 3rd grade to not come home with a Chromebook,
Yeah.
right?
And
Like,
like you said, like at home, you guys can have your own rules and
sure.
boundaries, but I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to kind of learn more about that and see what maybe the local Sioux Falls policies are because now
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. Well,
Yeah.
I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for chatting. This has been so fun.
Of
I got to
course.
learn new things, and I hope that folks listening can help them, just take some of that pressures off and help them find ways that make sense for them. I always like to end with the question of how have you been practicing authenticity lately?
Oh God.
Keyword practicing because we are works in progress.
I think I turned 39 almost a month ago, and I think I've just really learned what is important to me and what I value in life, and really showing up for myself more than I have had the capacity to do before, or even thought that I could. So I think being more, giving myself more permission to do things that I want to do and that make me happy and that fill my cup.
I love that.
Yeah.
That seems like a very like empowering, like freeing stage to get to. Cause I think, I've seen a lot of things about, in the teens and the 20s, you're kind of worried about that external stuff, trying to do things to like fit in. And then I've heard like as you get older, it's kind of like, I don't want to deal with play this game anymore.
Right.
Like life is too short. I want to do things that are like for me and what's important to me. It seems like you've been very intentional about that.
I think I've also just learned that nobody actually cares.
No, no.
Like, sure, my husband cares, the people in my life care about me, but besides my like small group of 20 people, nobody cares. Nobody cares if I want to sit outside with my coffee and read on my Kindle all day long.
No.
No
And the
one cares.
people that do care, like, want you to be happy, right? Like, if
Right.
people are like viewing things, and at least that's what I tell myself. Like, if my
Yeah.
house is a little messy and someone's going to come in and judge me, those probably aren't people in my close circle then.
Right.
Like, the people in my close circle are going to
Totally.
have grace and understanding and
Yeah.
probably not even notice.
Right.
But if they did notice, they're not gonna be like, oh my God, Alicia, you are the worst. They're gonna be
In
like,
your house.
oh. So I love that. That little reminder of like,
Yes.
one, no one probably cares. If
Yes.
they do care, they might not be those people in your inner circle because your inner circle wants you to win and succeed and to feel good.
Yeah.
Ugh,
Totally.
preach it.
I love
Well,
it.
thank you so much. It was
Yeah,
so
of
fun
course.
chatting with you. I will be posting Ryanne's contact info, her website, so you can learn more about her. She also has a podcast, so make sure to go listen to her. She's got some great stuff if you want to hear more about parenting and mental health and all the things. So thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Well, until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. And remember, the world needs the real you. So let's explore that authenticity together.